Come on. Pull her dress down a little more, yeah. Like that. That's how you look sultry, babe. I was directing the client's pose myself, just as she was arching her back and glancing over her shoulder all seductively, bang. The door got kicked and I locked eyes with one of the armed, buff guys. The screams around me were so loud I didn't even have time to enarch my back. The next thing I knew, I was face down on the floor, hands pinned behind me. Don't move, police. Help. That was my client, her friend, and my assistant screaming. Ill pay. Just don't hurt them. That was my last desperate shout. Didn't help. Though, the second I finished talking, another pair of hands slammed me back onto the floor. As my face scraped against the ground, one thought crossed my mind. At least I'm a neat freak. This floor's spotless. I have money. Don't. I lifted my head, trying to push myself up. In my panic, I didn't even realize I wasted this close to flashing everyone. The moment I moved, shut up. The hand on my head pushed down harder, followed by a low growl. Police. Stay down. Police. Since when do cops bust into people's homes like this? Before I could voice my confusion, the other officers turned away the second they saw my client. Two female cops rushed over to cover her with a jacket, reassuring her, "It's okay, we're the police. You're safe now." Me. Excuse me. I'm the one in danger here. Ow. I tried to squirm, mostly because having my wrists twisted behind me hurt. I'm cooperating. I swear. The grip on me loosened slightly, but every time I tried to get up, I was shoved right back down. We received a report about illegal activities here. We need to search the place. The voice was cold and professional, but I could have sworn I heard a slight tremor in it. Was he shocking from fear? No, just a rookie cop behind me. No wonder he was so rough. The officer pinning me down moved around to face me, still gripping my arms. His broad frame blocked the other cops as he yanked me up and grabbed a nearby floral print cloth, wrapping me up like a burrito. My hair was a mess. The guy stood silhouetted against the light, expression icy, sharp brows, a straight nose, thin lips. Normally, I'm very picky about men's faces, but even I had to admit, damn. What are you looking at? He snapped, between the panic and being trussed up like this. His tone sent me wobbling like a top. At the last second, he steadied me, with 3 fingers. Yep. My thumb, index, and middle fingers pinched my shoulder. Sorry. It's just, you slammed me down so hard my chest hurts. I'm kinda out of it. Instantly, his ears turned bright red. Now he was the one flustered. I'm the type who fights fire with fire. But his sudden awkwardness made me back off. I was about to apologize when he turned away, his glare darkening. Pfft. Like he wanted to stare at him. It's just, his face looked weirdly familiar. Maybe I've seen too many hot guys, and they all start to blend. Meanwhile, my assistant was trailing the searching officers, occasionally piping up to defend me and protect the equipment. Officers, please don't break the gear. Cops. Me. Hello. Your boss is still wrapped up like a mummy here. Am I not more important than the equipment? Okay. Fine. The gear's more expensive. After the search, one cop said flatly. We didn't find anything, but we'll need the person in charge to come with us. My boss would never do anything illegal. My assistant finally showed some loyalty. No. I yelled. My protests kept failing. Eventually, my assistant and the client explained everything, and I was finally freed from my cloth prison. But now, I was just a disheveled mess slumped against the staircase, blowing stray hairs out of my face. Officers. Have a seat. I can explain. I tried to hop forward and immediately face-planted. Turns out, some loss are inevitable. Mortifyingly, I ended up nose first in the chest of the same officer who'd been grinding my skull into the floor earlier. Dude had quick reflexes. If he hadn't turned back, I would have face-planted right behind him. Thud, that was the sound of my forehead hitting his badge. His hand stayed stiff at his sides while I wriggled against him like a worm trying to dig through concrete. So awkward. Officer. Help. He froze for 2 full seconds. Just as I was about to question his reaction time, whooshed, I was spun around like a top. The cloth unwinding before loosely draping back over me. This time, it didn't restrain me. I was about to thank him and forgive the whole head smashing thing, when a low, raspy, distractingly hot voice ordered, "Go put on proper clothes before coming back out." Harsh, less hot now. I told my assistant to serve everyone drinks and slunk off to change into an oversized shirt, ponytail up, legs out. Then a sudden realization hit me, and I clamped my mouth shut when I came back out. My tiny living room was packed with cops. My socially awkward assistant sat in the corner, fidgeting. "Sorry for the trouble, everyone." My bright, clear voice made them all turn. I'll admit, I'm confident in my looks. Every time I pick up a camera, someone asks, "I thought you were the model." Hey, a little self-love never hurt anybody. The officer had manhandled me earlier, stared Abia long. How did I know? Because I was staring right back. Suddenly, all the untouched drinks on the table were being hastily sipped. "You own this place?" an older cop asked. "Yep, photographer and boss." I nudged my assistant toward the client's room to keep her company. "Officers. What's going on? I'm a law-abiding citizen. I won't even eat undercooked meat, let alone do anything illegal," one of the female cops snorted. "If we'd known you looked like this, we wouldn't have been so rough earlier." "Right. Kiwasaro, Flirt." I rubbed my sore wrists, holding them up for emphasis while shooting a glare at the guy leaning against the wall, our eyes locked in silent understanding. "Ahem," he coughed, turning away like head choked on air after I explained everything, showing my portfolio, non-boudoir. Obviously. Awards. And certifications. They finally believed I wasn't running a shady operation. Then they pulled up the number that reported me when they called. The person on the other end hesitated before admitting they'd tried to book me, but I was fully scheduled. So they reported me out of spite. Unbelievable. The officer immediately let me go, deciding to summon her instead. When the team turned back to me, they exchanged glances before pushing forward their sweetest-looking female officer to make small talk with me. It was just the usual "sorry we scared you" spiel, honestly. I couldn't blame them. They'd been surveilling me for days, noticing different women coming and going from my place. Today, they'd even heard what sounded like conclusive evidence outside my door, hence the dramatic bust-in. The female officer and I hit it off. We added each other on WeChat right then and there, and she even quietly asked about booking a photo shoot with me. Meanwhile, the oldest officer pulled aside the one who'd restrained me earlier, chewing him out by the wall. "What was that today? Jumping in when you shouldn't have. You almost hurt her. Then, when you needed to react, you froze." She nearly hit the floor. He was talking about how the guy had shoved my head down earlier, and how I ended up face first against his chest, probably just giving me an out since they saw how much taxes I pay. But still, that ruthless jerk hadn't even apologized yet. Ugh. It hurts. Hope I can still hold my camera. The second I said that, the tall, coldly handsome officer became public enemy number 1. Apologize to her, now. You have no idea how to treat a woman, do you? You're taking her to the hospital before you clock back in. The team piled on, the younger guys even whispering something teasing in his ear, earning themselves an icy shove in return, rubbing my shoulder. I walked right up to him. "Give me your WeChat. You owe me." That got everyone staring. "Oh, Captain Goo, better add her and take responsibility." The same young officer who'd been shoved kept needling. "Got guts, girl. This guy's rough around the edges, but he's worth fixing. Rooting for you." An older officer chuckled, herding everyone out and ordering Officer Goodo escort me to the hospital before returning. Once they were gone and we were alone in my living room, he turned to leave until I grabbed his sleeve. "Seriously, it hurts." His hand froze mid-pull away. He turned, leveling me with a cold stare. Lily Evans. Let go. It was him, that detached, icy expression. Even our first meeting hadn't been this frigid. I recoiled instantly. Back then. It was my fault, wasn't it? That's why I hadn't dared believe it was him earlier. The Ethan Carter I knew had been gentle, scholarly, the kind of guy destined for academia. How had he ended up a cop? It was like he'd taken a wrong turn in life, and when had he recognized me? I was the one who'd pushed him away. Of course, he wouldn't want anything to do with me now, but here we were. Ms. You, he said flatly. Any medical expenses from the hospital can be reimbursed through the local precinct. No offer of contact info. A sudden lump rose in my throat. I opened the door for him, staring at the floor. Ethan Carter. I'm sorry. I forced my voice steady. If you don't want to see me, I won't bother you again. Ms. You. I don't do debts. Send the bills to local precinct. He repeated it sharply, already striding away before I could react. Something flickered in my understanding, then vanished just as fast. Wait. If he didn't want to see me, why make me go to him for reimbursement? Had Javito see me then? Screw it. My dignity was already shredded. For context, Ethan Carter and I went way back, during senior year. Had transferred to our small town for college prep due to residency rules. Maybe it was loneliness, being back in an unfamiliar place alone. Or maybe it was his top-tier grades and aloofness that kept him isolated. Or maybe it was just me, shamelessly chasing the guy whose desk happened to be closest to mine. Either way, I wore him down. For a while, we were together, then. Then came the words ID replayed at 2 a.m. So often I wanted to slap my past self. Let me explain. I blurted out urgently. If he didn't care anymore, did that mean I still had a chance? Or was I completely out of luck? But if he'd still care, then what I did was downright unforgivable. Too bad Ethan Carter wasn't interested in explanations. Right now, he was just lounging back, legs crossed, staring at me with a cold smirk. Oh, you think I'd fall for the same trick twice? Lily Evans. Huh. The sheer intimidation rolling off him made my legs wobble. Before I knew it, I'd sunk into a squat right in front of him, realizing how ridiculous I must looked. I quickly raised the boba tea in my hand like a peace offering. Okay, fine. At least take a sip first. Look at your lips, they're all chapped. Suddenly, Ethan Carter's gaze shifted from indifferent to downright intense, and there I was, holding out the drink like some kind of desperate tribute. The next second, he snatched the cup from me, only to set it on the table without even tasting it. Captain Carter, if you don't drink it now. The ISIL. Before I could finish, a strong hand clamped onto my shoulder and hauled me upright. Ethan Carter had insane grip strength. His palm was huge, effortlessly lifting me with one hand. Ow! I gasped. Swaying on unsteady feet, immediately, his hold shifted from my shoulder to my waist, steadying me. 2 seconds later, his eyes dropped to my tightly scrunched expression. Ithurts. I faked a wince. Charlie horse, I added, doubling down on the ACT. No one called me out, but I also couldn't keep shamelessly making the other officers wait outside, leaning against the desk for dramatic effect. I put on my best wounded puppy look and hobbled toward the door. The second I opened it, I caught a bunch of eavesdropping cops jerking back to attention. Officer Yes' eyes darted around, probably because Ethan Carter had just shot him a death glare, so he settled for giving me a meaningful look instead, not wanting the man in question to overhear. I motioned for you to lean in, ready to whisper some nonsense, but before I could even start lying through my teeth, the group suddenly scattered. A hand closed around my arm. Let's go. The hospital. And while we're at it, well, settle last time's bill. Quick as lightning, I flashed the others a smug grin, letting myself slump against Ethan Carter as we walked off together, judging by their stunned expressions. This little stunt had been worth it. Dramatic build-up. Shocking payoff, honestly. The captain was still so Naive, did he not realize walking out with me like this would just fuel the rumors even more? Take my car, I said. Handing him the keys before sliding obediently into the passenger seat, Ethan Carter shot me a frosty glance but ultimately took the driver's side. It'd been days since I'd seen him. And damn if he wasn't even hotter now. Maybe that's just the lingering effect of your first love. He adjusted the seat, buckled up, and refused to so much as glance my way. Seatbelt. I folded my hands primly in my lap. My wrists hurt. His Adam's apple bobbed, but his voice stayed icy. Lily Evans, cut the crap. Okay, I huffed, turning to stare out the window. I fumbled with the seatbelt latch, pretending I couldn't click it in. Then came the sound of his buckle releasing. The next second, he snatched the latch from my hands. As he leaned in close, I suddenly whipped my head around. The second the buckle clicked, I grabbed his collar. I never knew I had this kind of audacity. All I wanted was to talk to him properly, but then my lips brushed his cheek. He froze, eyes locked on the windshield, motionless. Ethan Carter, I know I messed up. You're the only one I've ever loved. I could never love anyone else. Let me chase you one more time, okay? I raced to get the words out, ready to swear on my life, only to hear a derisive scoff. His lips pressed into a thin line, jaw tight as he slowly straightened up. Still, he didn't spare me a single glance. Which hospital for your leg? No response to my confession. Just the damn medical bill, like he was drawing a line between us. I dropped my eyes. Defeated. Whatever. Ethan Carter's long fingers deftly fastened his seatbelt. As the engine roared to life, his low, rough voice cut through the noise. Crystal clear. Lily Evans, you're incredible fish. Cool. Detached. Like none of what just happened even mattered. Yeah. The wasselfish, the world didn't revolve around me. No one owed me anything. Least of all the chance to want someone like him, someone so far out of my league. I tore my gaze away from his profile. Never mind the hospital. My leg's fine. I was faking. So next time, you'll just show up at the precinct instead. Was he worried I'd latch onto him? I shook my head. Eyes down. Nope. I was lying. Can't selfishly waste a doctor's time. Ethan Carter paused, finally. He glanced at me, like it was some kind of mercy. If you're worried about my driving, just take me home. Last time's bill was $20. I bought some medicated oil, should last me years. He pulled into my complex, handed back my keys, and dug out a 50 from his pocket, slapping both into my palm. Then he was gone, didn't even pause. Oof, brutal. My bestie, Maya Rodriguez, propped her chin on her hand, giving me a look of pure exasperation. Yeah, Mom. What is it? I lifted my head weakly, only to be met with my best friend's blatant eye roll, taking in my pathetic state. Maya Rodriguez smirked, just one corner of her mouth quirking up, and let out a soft, mocking laugh. And if that look, she was ridiculing me, laughing at my lack of a spine, all bark, no bite. Heh. Maya saw right through me and dialed up the disdain now. She was straight up calling me a coward, infuriating. Lil, your imagination's working overtime, right now. I'm just genuinely annoyed with you. Annoyed. How? I spoiled her rotten, fine dining, designer bags, the works, and Shedderetto act like you was the nuisance. Maya poked my forehead so hard I flopped back onto the couch like a deflated balloon. Let's recap, shall we? For days, you've dragged me to every cafe in town. If you had something to say. Fine. But no, you're just vibing in your little crisis. You've stopped working, dragged me shopping. Like I give a damn about your handouts. If you're pissed, let's go find you a rebound. If you want my advice, at least explain the mess you're in. Maya and I met in college, right now. All she knew was that I'd failed to win back my ex. The backstory. Clueless. Two choices. 1. Hit the club with me tonight. 2. Spill your idiocy right now. 1 second. 2.3 minutes of silence. Amming at 9. Stand me up. And you're dead. She snatched the brand new bag ID just bought her and stormed toward the door. Wait, help me figure this out. If there was anyone left in the world I could turn to, it was her, Maya. The undisputed queen of dating warfare. Her eyes gleamed like a predator's. Just as I drew a breath to confess, nobody move. Chaos erupted at the entrance, screams, shattering glass. Maya and I locked eyes and dove under the table. Damn, girl, your secret's thrice explosive. Waste this price for hearing my drama. Shut up, shoo. I'd seen the glint of the blade in the intruder's hand. Thankfully, we were tucked away in a secluded corner. But relief vanished as fast as it came, because, of course, the hostage-taker was backing toward us, using the privacy to his advantage. You've gotta be kidding me. Maya's nails dug into my arm. I squeezed back just as hard. The man stopped behind a decorative screen, close enough that we could hear his ragged breathing. His hostage, a woman, kept eerily calm, talking him down. Buying time. Maya had been holding it together, until now. Her whole body trembled, worse than mine. Shed had a drunk father who once held a knife to her throat. Don't look. I covered her eyes with one hand, my voice barely audible with the other. I kept watch on the assailant, and started talking. I told her about Ethan Carter, anything to distract her from the shaking. That year, Ethan transferred back to our district for the SATs. He sat behind me in class. Lived next door. No time to make friends. Hi, I'm Lily Evans. At first, I just pitied him. Then, after the midterms, he blew the curve sky high, outscored the runner-up by 150 points. A prodigy already scouted by Ivies, only here because his paperwork hadn't gone through in time, but that icy demeanor. It earned him more sneers than respect. So I fed him a line. Tutor me, and people'll stop calling you a snob. Somehow, he bought it. We got closer. Turns out, Ethan wasn't arrogant, just luminous, and teenage me hooked. Later, my grades yo-yoed. I teased him. Maybe you're slacking cause we're just classmates. What if I'd ya boost my score? Your fundamentals are shaky, Head said. Drill 2 more sets. Then I'll give you advanced material. Promise. ID practically climbed onto his desk. Our faces inches apart, his cheeks flushed. The prettiest sunset of senior year. That night, walking home under the streetlights, I stayed unusually quiet until a whisper cut through the dark. Being my girlfriend might be boring. I don't care. My mouth moved before my brain. Another stretch of silence. At my doorstep, I grabbed his sleeve. So, can I be her? Ethan pinched his earlobe, voice muffled. First relationship. Go easy on me. Then what? Maya's whisper snapped me back. Her hand clutched mine over her eyes. Outside, sirens wailed. Police negotiators shouted. Then, I gained weight from stress. Weeks before the SATs, classmates razzied me. How'd you bag the genius? Their smirks shredded my 17-year-old. Overweight. Average GPA ego. I fired back, but they had comebacks 4 days. Every retort sounded like an excuse. So I snapped. At least I'm not dating a skeleton. Without his scores, he couldn't even protect me. The girl nodded behind me, then bolted. Ethan stood frozen in the hallway. Right. Just the grades. Then. He waited, but I'd used up all my words when he turned away. My youth ended with 3 sentences. SATs are tomorrow. No amount of my scores can help you now. Finishing the story, I glanced over my shoulder, like I could still see him walking off outside the window. A SWAT officer was being hoisted up, prepping for a breach. My vision blurred. I recognized him instantly. Ethan Carter. A soldier now. Armored in duty. Carrying the weight of every hope in that cafe. And no longer the skinny boy who didn't know how to feed himself. I realized long ago how stupid that argument was. I should have just walked away. Now, the shame burned worse. Ethan was me Anto Shine. I'd just been a speed bump on his way back to the stars. As I stared. He tapped the window, locked. Can't smash it without alerting the hostage taker. I crept forward to twist the latch, but the movement must caught the gunman's eye. Hey! Another scream tore through the cafe. The man yanked his hostage toward me. Blade raised, I fumbled with the lock, stuck, the knife gleamed inches from my face. Get lost. Ethan Carter's voice cut through the window. The next second, the window beside us was kicked open with a crash. The man had serious strength. He was the kind of person whose mere presence made everyone feel safe. I screamed and ducked down, clutching Maya Rodriguez in a panic. I don't know how long it lasted, probably just 2 minutes. But it felt like forever. By the time I looked up, the suspect was already in handcuffs. All the guests were being questioned in one area. Turns out it was just a couple fighting. What started as an argument escalated to shouting, then fists, and finally, one of them pulled a knife. When the questioning reached us, "Officer, you," looked at me in surprise. "Miss you. It is you. Are you okay?" Maya Rodriguez lifted my arm, revealing a shallow cut from the earlier chaos. "Does this look okay to you? You guys need to take responsibility." "Officer," you flinched at Maya's sharp tone. Seeing no one else left to question, he stammered, "Hang on a sec," and hurried off before I could even respond. I awkwardly looked down. It's not him. I know. It's the one who kicked the window, right? Maya said, already calm again, as if the earlier scare had never happened. "You've been staring at him this whole time." A moment later, Ethan Carter walked over. "Officer," you scratched his head. "Captain Gu. Could you see an injured civilian and don't know how to handle it?" Ethan's eyes locked onto the cut on my arm as he yanked off his wrist guard. I didn't understand why he was angry again. It's not like I was bothering him this time. Maybe it was because I was useless, couldn't even help. "Officer," you smacked his forehead. "Miss Gu, the ambulance is still here. You should go with them." He reached out to help me up. "This kid's hopeless," E muttered, then shoved her hand into Officer Yes. "What are you doing?" Officer You looked baffled when he glanced at his captain for help. Ethan didn't even acknowledge him, realizing he'd messed up again. Officer You tried to pull his hand back, but E held on tight. "My legs are weak. Take me to Sunnybrook Counseling Center. I need to see a therapist." I immediately frowned. "I knew you were faking. Come on, I'll go with you." "Not you," E said, steering Officer You along. Before leaving, she turned back to Ethan. "Captain Gu." She twisted her ankle. "Make sure she gets home safe." By then, the crowd had cleared out. I was just waiting for an excuse to leave. "Can you walk?" Ethan's voice came from above me. I stared at the floor for 2 seconds before looking up. "No." Without hesitation, Ethan unclipped his gear and handed it to another officer. When he bent down, I instinctively reached out. The next thing I knew, I was in his arms, lifted off the ground, ignoring the stunned looks around us. I clung to his neck, my face buried against the sharp line of his jaw. "You need the hospital." His voice was still calm, but it felt softer now. For a second, it was like we were back in high school. I shook my head, my hair brushing his cheek. "Last time, you gave me $50. Was that left over from the medical fees you paid? So now you cut the crap." Ethan snapped. Back to his usual stern tone, I pressed my lips together and stayed quiet as he set me down in the passenger seat. He took the keys from me. "Wait here. They'll take you home after." Even though his expression was still cold, something felt different. A familiar warmth was creeping back in. "You're being weirdly nice today," I said, leaning against the window as I waved him off. "Go ahead. I'll wait." I'd wait for him. Maybe he'd finally be willing to hear me out, and if he still couldn't forgive me after that, then fine. Ji Xing. My smile froze before I could even finish it. A bright, energetic girl came running across the street. She had a high ponytail and a lively, confident grin. Ethan stood by the hood of the car, frowning at her. "Slow down." In the sunlight, she barely reached his shoulder, but the way she looked up at him was so self-assured. Ethan's neck still glistened with sweat, but right then, he looked alive. My heart skipped. "Ji Xing, Mom and I came to see you. I was so scared watching from across the street earlier." Ethan glanced toward the other side of the road. Where's Mom? The girl crossed her arms. She's having tea downstairs at your place. I just came out to grab a few things. She beamed. I'm making your favorite tonight. Oh, give me the keys. You should have told me you were coming, Ethan said. Handing them over, they fell into an easy back and forth, laughter, replies. The whole thing like some heartwarming scene. The girl finally left after Ethan urged her to head back, but not before giving me a friendly nod. Don't let me interrupt your heroic duties. They'll see you at home. As far as I knew, Ethan was an only child, but this girl called his mom Mom too. Ethan glanced at me before turning to leave, probably to wrap things up. Ethan. I pushed the car door open. Sorry for lying again, I said, gripping the door to steady myself. My leg's fine. Just give me the keys. I'll get home myself. If that'd been fine earlier, but now. I could barely stand. Ethan's expression, which had softened moments ago, turned icy again. Every step he took toward me made him feel farther away. You're going alone. He held out the keys. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Fine. Suit yourself. Ethan scoffed, took 2 steps back, and turned away. I'm sorry, Ethan. The hot wind blew past, but I was shivering. A deep, bone-chilling cold. I'm sorry for what I said back then. Don't forgive me, because if you do, I'll spend the rest of my life regretting that I let the best of you slip away. And no one turned around. All I could see was his broad back. I didn't even dare to memorize his face one last time. I'm sorry. I didn't know you had a girlfriend. I shouldn't have bothered you all this time. Your job's different. I get why you'd want to protect your family. I crossed a line. I won't show up again. You should be happy that I couldn't say it, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't feel like I had the right. Tears kept falling no matter how many times I wiped them. So damn annoying. I didn't see when Ethan turned back. Of course. Our last meeting had to be me at my absolute worst. My face was a mess. My brain completely fried. Consider it my punishment that the final memory I'd have of me was this pathetic. But then, I slumped back into the passenger seat, his scorching, almost searing lips burned against mine. I forgot to breathe. Tears blurred Ethan Carter's face so badly I could barely see him. Before I could even process what the kiss meant, I shoved him away, twisting around. I grabbed a tissue from the back seat and dabbed at my nose before it could start running. So awkward. Would it be weird if I blew my nose now? Loudly. Maybe I could just crawl under the car. Why doesn't this thing have a trapdoor? Worst design ever. Need help. Ethan hadn't moved from his spot by the door, but I could still feel the heat radiating off him. Inching closer. Nope. I cleaned up quickly, then discreetly checked my reflection on my phone. Only after confirming I looked presentable did I turn back. His lips crashed into mine again. Even hotter than before. Ethan cupped the back of my neck, pulling me toward him. I had no choice but to wrap my arms around him and kiss him back. By the time we broke apart, my head was spinning. This was something I'd never dared hope for, getting back what I'd lost, the biggest surprise of my life. So in your mind, I'm the kind of guy who keeps a wife at home while fooling around outside, all under the guise of protecting someone. No, that's not. I'd been an idiot. The man I fell for would never do something that sleazy, even if he couldn't share details about his family. He could have at least mentioned having gone. So, do you want me to take you home? Ethan gave me a knowing look. I nodded robotically. Damn it. This man was not the same innocent boy I once knew. He had me figured out. By the time Ethan dropped me off, 2 hours had passed. I flopped onto the couch. A few band-aids stuck on my arms. He helped himself to a glass of water. The second he sat down, his phone rang. Yeah. Sheeshing. Aren't you off work yet? I quietly straightened up, readying my goodbye speech. I'm busy. You and Mom go ahead and eat. Don't wait for me. Without waiting for a response, he hung up. You should head home and wait. You're not leaving. Not yet. Later. Ethan let out a soft laugh, barely there, but unmistakable in the awkward silence. I don't even remember how we ended up kissing again. all I know is that at the last possible moment, Ethan stopped, gently brushing his lips over mine instead but my face burning. I met his gaze, he studied me for a second before kissing me again. Wanna move to the bedroom? I nodded toward the hall. Ethan clenched his jaw and shook his head. You're not ready. Ready for what? The thought flickered. But before I could overanalyze it, Ethan yanked me back to reality. By biting me. I'd noticed it earlier, when he kissed. He just went for it. No technique whatsoever. My lips had already been nipped a few times. Lily Evans. Focus. His rough voice sent a wave of heat straight to my ears, making me shiver. The weight of him pressed against me, impossible to ignore. After a while, I felt him slowly calm down. He kissed me softly one last time before pulling away. I'll cook for you. Then head out. He opened the fridge. It was practically empty. I usually cook. Just not this week. We ended up ordering takeout. The time waiting for food is the last bit of us today. I hugged his arm, sighing dramatically, then he yanked me into his chest. The whiplash was unreal. How could someone so cold earlier today be this warm? Ethan held me tighter than I expected. If I stayed perfectly still, I could feel his heartbeat. That girl today is Sophie Miller, our neighbor's kid. There aren't many activities in the compound, so she adopted a bunch of aunties for fun. My mom's one of them, that's all. So they'd known each other since childhood. Lucky I'd known Ethan for 7 years, and for 6 of those, we hadn't seen each other at all. But you talked to her so much, and you've been ignoring me all week. I thought you hated me, that I was messing up your life. Ethan released me just to grip my chin. I was scared you'd get bored again and leave me behind like last time. I wouldn't. I shook my head under his gaze. He stared into my eyes, dead serious, finally. His lips parted. Swear it. I swear. Ethan Carter is the only one I'll ever love. I won't fail you again. After that, we entered our shameless honeymoon phase. Ethan would come straight to my place after work. If I was busy at the studio, he'd cook and wait. Sometimes, just as I finished working and he finished cooking, his phone would ring, and he'd have to leave, leaving me alone with a delicious meal. Seriously, did I land myself some kind of magical house husband? I was living, especially since my boyfriend was ridiculously hot and skilled in every way. We were blissful for over 2 months. Then, at the end of summer, Sophie Miller showed up. She and her mom had already gone back to the capital, but she'd returned just to see me. Stop holding Xixing back, okay? The furious girl at my door almost made me laugh. And why exactly am I holding him back? Sophie puffed up like an angry chick, just as she was about to unleash her rant. My neighbor's door opened. The girl froze, then darted past me into my apartment. Oh. So she'd scare about making a scene. Sophie waited in my living room, making sure I'd closed the door. Xixing was a physics prodigy. Everyone in the military had high hopes for him. But because of you, he stalled for years, then volunteered to transfer to this dump to be a cop. He promised he'd return to research this year, but now he's refusing. He wants to stay here. You ruined him. How could you do this to him? Half an hour later, I nudged Sophie Miller's little head and practically shooed her out the door. Your Xixing Gij is about to come home. And your Onlyang Jijia has something important to do. Go play by yourself. By the time Ethan Carter got off work and arrived, I'd already made dinner. The moment he stepped inside, he dropped whatever he was carrying and came straight for me. Slow day at work. He didn't even wait for an answer before his lips were on mine. His kiss was scorching, all-consuming. Ethan Carter, who usually humored me in everything, refused to compromise on this. He took full control. By the time I managed to gasp, stop, his hand was already on the bedroom doorknob. I need to talk to you. His warm lips trailed along my skin. Go back to research. Ethan Carter finally paused. What? The disbelief in his eyes was almost frightening, like we weren't discussing his career but a breakup. I wrapped my arms around his waist and looked up at him. Take me with you. His expression softened instantly. The grip around my waist loosened slightly. Where'd this come from? I always knew you'd be an incredible physicist. But today, I found out you're even more brilliant than I thought. You're a research scientist with a national-level appointment. I nuzzled against him, laying it on thick. Ethan Carter was helpless against this side of me, his ears turning faintly pink from the praise. A man like him, admired by so many, never lacked validation. Yet here he was, blushing over my words. So damn cute. Seeing you as a cop that day honestly scared me. I never expected to see that side of you. Don't get me wrong, it's a noble profession, but it's not where you belong. Shishing. Let's go back to the institute. Ethan Carter listened silently, his gaze shimmering but never leaving my face. At my last sentence. Surprise flickered across his features. How do you know about the institute? The institute we meant wasn't a literal school. It was a zone, a hub for researchers working on national-level scientific projects. Encircled by a military perimeter, not exactly classified. But its significance was immeasurable. Ethan Carter's parents worked there, had grown up there, with the rigorous military drills constantly happening outside. Those inside the research sector learned to balance it with deliberate downtime. So they called it the Institute. A place of learning, progress, discipline. Sophie Miller's visit earlier hadn't spelled it out, but ID pieced it together. IT was a remarkable place, and a place that remarkable, that consequential, needed Ethan Carter. He cradled the back of my head as if worried I'd strain my neck looking up at him. Anan. The first time I left there, I met you. The second time, I begged for the chance. There won't be a third. That place is better than anywhere else in the world. But without you, my brain doesn't function. Someone more capable will come along. I'm coming with you. I heard the institute is bigger than a small town, full of fascinating people. I want to go home with you. The corners of Ethan Carter's eyes reddened. A blink and a teardrop landed on my cheek. Anan. I'm willing. Whatever it was, I was willing. The consequence of saying I'm willing was Ethan Carter dragging me to a notary first thing the next morning, the paperwork. Transferring every cent of his assets into my name. He called it my engagement pledge. When I saw the balance, enough to keep 3 generations of us comfortable, I interrogated him. Turns out when my mom visited 2 months ago, she was handling the sale of our property here. Got a great price. Combined with his near-zero personal spending, his savings were impressive. My parents can't come to meet you. They're sorry about that. So they wired the betrothal gifts separately. More than my savings. Well, sign the transfer at the institute, all yours. Holy hell. I am rich. Y'all. Ethan Carter. Marry me. Right now. Anan. He produced every form of ID he owned, plus an antique box containing an emerald ring. Marry me. I do. Epilogue 1. Ethan Carter's been buried in transfer paperwork lately. His supervisor fully supported his return to research, even thanked me. Meanwhile, I've been handing off my photography studio. My assistant adores the craft, so I left her my equipment, props, and a year's extra pay to chase her passion, before reuniting with Ethan Carter. I was a workaholic. Now that I don't need work to fill the void, I'd rather shoot for creativity than treat it as a job. Something tells me the institute will spark new inspiration. It's been too long since I won an award. I'm itching for one. The only thing you'll miss is E. Back at the cafe. E assumed I was here to flaunt my relationship again and rolled her eyes. Until she heard I was leaving, she sat bolt upright. Does this mean we'll never see each other again? I tapped my chin. Not necessarily. Leaving the institute requires a ton of paperwork, but they do allow annual trips. The next few hours were spent in comfortable silence. Neither of us mentioning goodbyes. Then Ethan Carter called repeatedly, insisting on picking me up. He showed up with Officer UNTOW.AT first. I thought it was a coincidence, until you gently took E's hand and murmured reassurances. Ms. You. I'll take good care of ye. I cleared my throat. And if you don't, you know what'll happen. My threat lacked bite. Officer Yu just smiled sheepishly. Yu Ching, Ethan Carter barked. Sir, take care of Maya Rodriguez, or I'll come back and deal with you myself. Yes, Captain Gu. Bonus scene 2. Ethan Carter asked me if we should meet my parents before getting married. I pulled out my social security card, the one with only my name on it. Let's go for a walk. If fate brings us across them, then we'll see them. Them. He looked at me with pity. I laughed. My parents and my brother. They're doing just fine. That's all I could say. As it turned out, the didn't have plans, even though we deliberately went to a familiar area. I never actually expected to run into them. Ethan Carter recognized my mom instantly, luckily. It was just her. I introduced him briefly, and when she invited us upstairs, I politely declined. We're leaving soon. Probably won't be back. Anything else you two want to talk about? So they stepped aside to chat. Just from their expressions, I could guess how the conversation went. First half. Ethan Carter, ever the gentleman, apologized for taking me away. Swore he'd never let me suffer. His eyes dead serious as he made his vows. Second half. My mom explained my strained relationship with the family. It started back in senior year. My parents had always promised that even after my little brother was born, I'd still be their most treasured child, but as he grew up, he outshone me, smarter, more well-behaved, a prodigy drowning in awards and praise. Then, senior year, my parents filed for divorce. They fought over custody of him, dragging it to court. Meanwhile, me, the girl raised on endless affection, was just left behind. 18-year-old Lily Evans became a bystander in her own family. Overnight, I turned bitter, insecure, lashing out at everyone, even Ethan Carter, who didn't deserve it. In the end, my parents didn't divorce, but the family fell apart anyway. No, I fell apart from them. I was the one who cut ties. I gave them a lot of money, so much, specifically for my brother. That was my bargaining chip to sever everything. To this day, my brother still doesn't know. He thinks I just resent our parents. He still sneaks concern my way. Even learned to cook for me. He's not at fault. He's a good kid. I am just the one who wasn't meant to stay. Bonus scene 3. The overpass at dusk. A slow breeze rolling in, the sunset carried away the day's warmth, but tomorrow's sun would rise with new hope. Lily Evans, do you have any idea how much I love you? Ethan Carter hadn't spoken since we left, still gripping my hand, but I could feel it, his arm tightening around me, the simmering anger underneath, the lingering fear. If there'd been more people around, someone might thought he was kidnapping me. I'm sorry. I didn't protect you. Not your fault. You didn't hurt me. Anan, don't leave me. I want. Unless you stop loving me. His expression turned solemn. I'll love you, in this life and every one after. I laughed, eyes stinging. He laughed, too, until his own eyes turned red. Take me away, Ethan Carter. Okay, let's go home. I can't imagine what would have happened if he hadn't come back for me. I probably would have spent my whole life searching for him, but had it come back, with regret, with burning love, and he found me. Bonus scene 4. Let me just say that, New Life is amazing. This place is like paradise, besides the serious academics and sweaty military guys. The families and women here are a riot, our most important daily mission. Figuring out new ways to have fun, more than once. Ethan Carter has had to hunt me down after work because he never knows whose place it'll be at. Eventually, he stopped caring about appearances, started carrying me off in front of everyone. Ethan Carter, you're ruining my dignity. Relax. Your husband outranks them. No one's laughing. Our home is cozy, but we don't get many visitors. In his words. Every corner here is full of our memories. You really want to taint future ones with other people's shadows. Ethan Carter. ID turned bright red. Meanwhile, head just smirk. Completely unbothered, nothing like the stern Nah, nonsense man, everyone else sees. Want rib soup for dinner? Ainin. Make it sweet and sour. Ha. Yeah. Whatever my wife wants.